Title: She invited the broke driver to ridicule him, but the handsome stranger who showed up left her regretting everything. Opening screen: uplifting, yet dramatic orchestral music builds. Channel logo and karma stories. Text fade in elegantly. Narrator: warm, deep, engaging male voice with African, my wonderful family. Welcome back to the channel that brings you powerful stories of karma, redemption, and hidden greatness. If you enjoy tales where the proud fall and the humble rise, where arrogance crumbles and quiet dignity triumphs, then you are absolutely in the right place today. Before we begin this brand new, completely original story, please do me a big favor: smash that like button right now if you believe good always triumphs over evil. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement today: a friend, a colleague, a family member who has been underestimated. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your life. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more of these powerful, life-changing stories every single week. Thank you so much. Now let's dive in. To set the perfect mood, let's quickly revisit the 3 key scenes from the original viral story that inspired this fresh masterpiece. Scene 1: the cruel setup. Wealthy and arrogant Adaranki constantly disrespected her quiet driver Sadik, treating him worse than dirt. One day she invited him to her extravagant birthday party purely as a joke so her elite friends could laugh and mock him publicly. She thought it was genius. She thought it was harmless. She was wrong on both counts. Scene 2: the hidden transformation. Instead of breaking, Sadik reached deep into his past as a professional model, dusted off an elegant old suit, and showed up at the party completely transformed, radiating quiet confidence and unshakable dignity. He didn't say a word to announce himself. He didn't need to. Scene 3: the stunning reversal. Everyone at the party was left stunned. Sadik gained admiration from guests and a talent agent. His career soared, while Adaranki's social status crumbled as people witnessed her cruelty. She ended the night deeply humbled and reflective, alone in a crowd she had created. Music builds with tension. And now, here is our brand new, never-before-heard story following the exact same proven viral model you love. Arrogant rich woman, public ridicule of a broke driver, shocking transformation reveal, massive crowd reaction, career explosion for the underdog, total humbling of the rich lady, and beautiful redemption. This one is set in contemporary Abuja and Lagos, packed with deeper family drama, romance hints, business intrigue, and emotional twists that will keep you hooked right until the very last word. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Arrogant Queen and the Silent Storm. In the heart of Abuja, Madam Vivian Okoye reigned as one of the most feared and respected businesswomen in Nigeria's capital. At 45, she owned a chain of luxury hotels, several oil servicing companies, and a sprawling estate in Maitama that looked less like a home and more like a monument to her own ambition. Her wardrobe was filled with the latest designers from Paris and Dubai. Her jewelry was insured for more money than most Nigerians earned in a decade. She threw parties that attracted senators, celebrities, and billionaires. And yet, despite all of this, or perhaps because of its success had turned her tongue into a weapon that she wielded without mercy. Her personal driver, Emeka Nwasu, had served her faithfully for 7 long years. Emeka was 37, a quiet, tall, dark-skinned man with broad shoulders he usually kept hunched beneath his faded navy uniform. He moved through the world with his eyes down, and his voice soft, the kind of man that people look past rather than at. He was a widower raising his 10-year-old son, Kosi, a bright and curious boy who inherited his father's quiet intensity. Emeka also cared for his elderly father, a retired schoolteacher named Pa Nwasu, who now suffered from severe arthritis and could barely hold a pen, the same pen he had used for 30 years to write on chalkboards in the village school where Emeka had first learned to dream. The salary from Madame Vivian paid the rent in their small 2-bedroom flat in Lug, kept Kosi enrolled in a decent school, and covered Pa Nwasu's medications. Every naira was accounted for. Every month was a careful calculation. Emeka knew the weight of every responsibility and carried it without complaint. Every single day at work, the humiliation was relentless. "Emeka, must you drive like an old woman crossing a market road? My time is more valuable than your entire life," she would snap sharply from the back seat, not even looking up from her phone. In front of her friends, she would gesture at him like a piece of furniture. "This one is just a driver. He has no ambition, no class, no prospects. Look at how he dresses, like a beggar who found a uniform in a dustbin." Her guests would laugh, and Emeka would simply open the door for them, eyes down, jaw tight, saying nothing. He would hold the door open and let their laughter wash over him like rain, and when the door closed, he would breathe. But there were things Emeka never said, things he never showed, and things no one knew. What no one knew, not even his own son, not even his elderly father, was that Emeka had once been a rising star in the international modeling world. 10 years earlier, while pursuing a fashion design degree in London on a partial scholarship, he had begun walking runways for top African designers and quickly caught the eye of industry professionals. His unusual combination of height, symmetry, and what one scout called a quietness that photographs like thunder made him stand apart in a crowded field. He landed a campaign with a major skincare brand. His face had graced billboards in Johannesburg and Accra. Industry insiders whispered that he was the next big thing, a face that could cross continents. Then tragedy tore everything apart. His wife, Adana, died in a car accident outside Enugu while he was on a shoot in Dakar. He got the call in his dressing room, still in full makeup, runway lights buzzing overhead. By the time he landed in Nigeria, the funeral had already been arranged by her family. He stood at her graveside in the same suit he had worn on the plane and felt something inside him go permanently quiet. He looked at his 4-year-old son Kosi, who didn't fully understand what had happened but kept asking, "Where is Mama?" And Emeka made a silent decision. No more runways, no more spotlights. Kosi needed stability. Pa Nwasu needed care. The family needed an anchor. He returned to Abuja, buried his dreams alongside his wife, and took the driving job to provide that stability. The modeling world forgot him within a year. Agents stopped calling. His name disappeared from conversations. And slowly, carefully, Emeka forgot himself too, or at least he told himself he had. But the mirror always told a different story. One humid Friday evening, Madame Vivian was lounging by her private pool with her circle of elite friends, a rotating gallery of wealthy wives, social media influencers, and women who had turned cruelty into a social sport. They were planning her 46th birthday gala, an extravagant event to be held at her newly renovated Grand Horizon Hotel in Victoria Island, Lagos. "I want this party to be unforgettable," she declared, swirling imported wine in a crystal glass. "Not just memorable, iconic. I want people talking about it for the rest of the year." Her best friend, Kioma, a sleek woman with a sharp tongue and too much time on her hands, giggled mischievously. "Then you need entertainment, Vivian. Real entertainment." She leaned forward. "Invite your broke driver. Imagine him showing up in that sad uniform among all the beautiful people. We can make him stand by the door and serve drinks." Imagine the footage, it would be comedy gold. In all the group chats, the other women howled with laughter. One of them, Ronk, nearly choked on her cocktail. Madame Vivian's eyes sparkled with cruel excitement. "Perfect. Oh, this is genius. I'll send him a proper invitation, gold lettering, the whole thing, like he's an honored guest of honor. He'll come thinking he's special and important, then we'll all see how out of place he looks standing among real people. Record everything. I want every single reaction captured." She pulled out her phone immediately. She composed a fancy digital invitation with gold lettering, a formal font, and the hotel's prestigious address in full. She sent it to Emeka's number with a voice note that dripped with false warmth. "Emeka, you are invited to my birthday celebration this Saturday at the Grand Horizon Hotel in Lagos. 7 p.m. sharp. Don't come late, and please try not to embarrass me with your usual appearance." She and her friends were still roaring with laughter as she hit send. Emeka received the message in the modest living room of their flat in Lug. His elderly father was seated at the small dining table nearby, and Emeka was helping him carefully count out his evening medications, arthritis tablets, blood pressure pills, a vitamin supplement, laying them on the table in order like a quiet daily ritual. He set the medications down, read the message slowly, and read it again. His gentle face showed no immediate reaction, no smile, no frown, but inside, deep inside, something long buried shifted, like tectonic plates moving beneath still water. He looked across the room at the old suitcase under the bed that was visible through the half-open bedroom door. Dark brown leather, scratched at the corners, the zipper held closed by a small combination lock he hadn't touched in years. Inside were remnants of his past life: a tailored suit, a folded portfolio, press clippings, and a small photograph of himself standing on a runway in Cape Town, 28 years old, a spotlight making him glow like something legendary. That night, after Kosi had fallen asleep with his schoolbooks scattered across his pillow, and after Pa Nwasu's snoring filled the small flat with a familiar rhythm, Emeka sat alone on the narrow balcony. The Abuja night was warm and electric with distant traffic. He looked up at the stars, those same stars that had watched over his whole life, and whispered quietly, steadily, like a man making a vow, "They want to ridicule me, but maybe it is time the world sees who I really am." For the next few days, Madame Vivian bragged openly and without shame about her hilarious plan. She called it a social experiment. She told her hotel manager to have cameras positioned discreetly near the entrance. She warned her photographer to be ready for special entertainment when the driver arrived. She giggled about it during business meetings. She narrated the plan in elaborate detail to every person in her social circle. Meanwhile, Emeka quietly made arrangements of his own. On Tuesday, he contacted an old modeling mentor named Mr. Bayo Adebimp, a veteran fashion industry figure based in Lagos who had first spotted Emeka's potential 15 years ago. Mr. Bayo had sent several messages over the years that Emeka had never answered. Now Emeka typed 4 words and sent them: "I am coming back." On Wednesday morning, before his shift, Emeka visited a master tailor in Woos Market named Mr. Hassan, a small, precise man with measuring tape permanently draped around his neck, and eyes that could read a person's frame like a book. Emeka explained what he needed. Mr. Hassan studied him for a long, silent moment, then nodded once and said, "Come back Thursday. It will be ready." On Thursday evening, after delivering Madame Vivian home and parking the car, Emeka collected the suit, paid the balance, and carried it home in a garment bag. He told no one his plans, not his father, not Kosi, not a single soul. This was his private resurrection, a thing too sacred and too fragile for anyone else's eyes until the moment came. Friday night, he ironed everything himself by the light of a single lamp, moving with the slow precision of a man who had once done this 100 times backstage at international shows. He polished the shoes, Italian leather from his old life, tucked in the back of the suitcase, still holding their shape. He trimmed his beard in the bathroom mirror with the careful attention of an artist working on something important. His father appeared in the doorway at one point, squinting. "Emeka, why are you dressed like that at this hour?" "I have somewhere to go tomorrow night, Papa," Emeka said simply. Pa Nwasu studied his son for a long moment. Then he nodded, the way old men nod when they recognize something they cannot fully name. "Go well," he said softly, and returned to bed. Chapter 2. The transformation and the electric arrival. Saturday came like destiny, heavy with purpose, dressed in heat and anticipation. Madame Vivian's birthday gala was a spectacle of extraordinary proportions. The Grand Horizon Hotel ballroom in Victoria Island, Lagos, had been transformed into something that looked less like an event venue and more like a dream. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it in 1,000 directions. Towering ice sculptures flanked the entrance, one shaped like an eagle, one like an hourglass. A live jazz band performed on a raised platform, their music wrapping around conversations like velvet. Over 400 high society guests moved through the space in designer outfits, trailing perfume and laughter and ambition. The red carpet stretched from the entrance to the ballroom doors. Drone cameras hummed overhead, capturing everything. The air smelled of flowers, money, and possibility. Madame Vivian stood at the center of it all in a stunning gold sequin gown that caught every light in the room. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, her smile was wide and sharp and full of the particular confidence of a woman who believes the night belongs entirely to her. "Where is he?" she whispered to Kioma, checking her phone. "Our entertainment hasn't arrived yet." Kioma checked her watch. "Give him time. He probably got lost. He's never been invited anywhere like this in his life." Both women laughed softly. At exactly 7:20 p.m., a modest silver Camry dusty from the Lagos Expressway, unremarkable in every visible way, pulled up at the main entrance. The valet moved forward with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to luxury cars. He almost smirked when he saw the vehicle. Then the door opened. The atmosphere shifted immediately, a subtle but unmistakable change in the air, the way a room shifts when something significant walks in. It was the kind of thing you felt before you could explain it. Out stepped a man who looked nothing like a driver. Out stepped a man who looked like the answer to a question no one had thought to ask. Emeka Nwasu had undergone a complete and total metamorphosis. The perfectly tailored midnight black suit Mr. Hassan's masterwork hugged his athletic 62 frame with the precision of something built specifically for that body and no other. The silk lapels caught the ballroom light like polished obsidian. A crisp white shirt, subtle gold cufflinks that caught the light with each movement, and shoes buffed to a mirror finish completed the picture. His beard was trimmed with professional precision, clean edges, perfect symmetry. His hair was styled in a low, deliberate cut that framed his face with quiet authority. And his posture, that hunched, invisible posture from 7 years of carrying other people's contempt, was completely gone. He stood at his full height, shoulders back, spine straight, walking with the slow, measured confidence of a man who knows exactly who he is and has stopped apologizing for it. The humble, invisible driver had vanished entirely. In his place stood a strikingly handsome stranger who commanded attention without uttering a single word. The valet forgot to speak. The security team at the door froze, then stepped aside without being asked. A cluster of guests near the red carpet turned, and then turned again to make sure they had seen correctly. Cameras flashed instinctively. People who had not planned to take photos found their phones rising to their faces. Whispers erupted and spread through the crowd like a current of electricity. "Who is that fine man? Is he a celebrity? I feel like I've seen him before. He looks familiar. Which show was he on? Someone find out his name immediately." Emeka walked into the ballroom with complete, unhurried calm. He paused briefly at the entrance and let his eyes adjust to the light. He did not look around anxiously. He did not search for a familiar face. He simply stood and let the room come to him. The jazz band seemed to falter for half a beat, whether from distraction or something more instinctive. No one could say. Madame Vivian was mid-toast on the raised stage, her champagne glass lifted, her voice carrying over the speakers. She saw him, and the toast died in her throat. "Emeka." Her voice amplified, exposed, cracked clearly over the entire sound system. 400 heads turned, first toward her, then in the direction of her gaze. Then the silence swelled. Her friends who had planned the ridicule were scattered near the front. Kioma stood with her drink raised halfway to her lips and simply stared. Ronk, beside her, made a small sound that might have been a laugh that got confused on its way out. Neither of them moved. A popular senator near the front of the room stood up and began to clap slowly at first, then with growing conviction. A famous Nollywood director, standing near the bar with 2 of his producers, pointed openly and said in a voice loud enough for many to hear, "My God, somebody get me that man's number. He should be on my next poster." Madame Vivian tried to recover. She forced a laugh into the microphone, brittle and hollow, the laugh of someone who knows they have miscalculated badly. "Everyone, please relax. That is just my driver, Emeka. He must have borrowed a suit from somewhere. Very amusing, yes." She tried to make it light. She tried to make it a joke within the joke, but no one laughed. And in the silence where their laughter should have been, something changed permanently in that ballroom. Instead, guests moved toward Emeka. The crowd parted and then closed around him, not with mockery, but with genuine curiosity and admiration. People introduced themselves. Business cards were exchanged. A CEO of a major real estate company shook Emeka's hand and said simply, "I don't know what your story is, but I would like to." Then an international fashion scout named Dara Osai, who was present as a personal guest of the hotel owner, pushed through the crowd with the look of someone who had just found exactly what they had been searching for. She was small, precise, and moved with purpose. She studied Emeka's face for 3 full seconds. "Wait, you are Emeka Nwasu. You are the silent storm, the model who walked the runways in 2014 and 2015 before disappearing. Your campaign for Lumia Skin ran across 5 countries. I have one of those billboards in a folder in my Lagos office." She paused. "What happened to you?" The entire circle around them went quiet. Emeka looked at her steadily. When he spoke, his voice was deep and unhurried, carrying across the silence with zero effort. "Life tested me. I chose my family over my career, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over." He paused. "But now I believe both are possible." The circle erupted. Not in applause, but in something more electric, the buzz of people who know they are witnessing something real. Within 30 minutes, videos and photographs had flooded social media platforms. Hashtags were moving faster than any promotional team could have engineered. Handsome driver, Abuja to Lagos glow-up, the silent storm, and most powerfully, simply Emeka. The comments filled in seconds. This man walked into a room and made everyone else look like they were dressed wrong. 7 years as a driver, and this is what he looked like under that uniform. Respect. "Ma'am, your plan backfired at a level the dictionary doesn't have a word for." A top modeling agency CEO, Modeling Hub Africa, approached Emeka directly before the night was over. They had a contract conversation on the back patio of the hotel while the party continued inside. A luxury watch brand whose regional director happened to be among the 400 guests sent their representative over with a business card and an expression of barely concealed urgency. Madame Vivian stood near the side of the stage and watched her perfect, carefully planned night dissolve. The people who had always praised her were now gathered around the man she had spent 7 years belittling. The laughter she had orchestrated had turned back on her. The spotlight she had arranged to humiliate him now illuminated him in ways she had never imagined possible. One of her most significant business partners, a property developer named Mr. Adwale, with whom she had built 3 joint ventures, approached her quietly near the ice sculpture. He did not smile. "Vivian," he said carefully, "I have heard some things tonight about how this man has been treated. The world is watching this unfold in real time." He left a significant pause. "I will need to think carefully about several things in the days ahead." He walked away without waiting for her response. Emeka, at the invitation of the hotel's master of ceremonies, was given the microphone for a brief, unrehearsed moment near the end of the evening. He had not prepared anything. He stood at the podium and looked out at the 400 faces looking back at him, and spoke from somewhere honest. "I spent 7 years learning that a uniform does not define a man, that the size of your car does not measure the size of your character. I was told through actions, if not always words, that I was invisible, that I was small. I want to say to anyone in this room who has ever been made to feel that way, the world cannot see your value if you have forgotten it yourself." Tonight I remembered mine. The applause that followed lasted nearly a full minute. Chapter 3, The Rise, the Fall, and the Road to Redemption. Sunday morning arrived quietly in Lagos. The parties had ended. The chandeliers had gone dark, but the conversation had not stopped. By the time Emeka woke in his hotel room, a modest single room he had booked with careful savings, unwilling to assume anything about the night, his phone had 214 unread notifications. He sat on the edge of the bed in the early morning light and scrolled through them slowly, with the careful expression of a man who has learned not to be swept away by things until he understands them. Messages from journalists. Requests for interviews. A direct message from a magazine editor. A voice note from Mr. Bayo Adebimp, his old mentor, that lasted 4 minutes and ended with barely controlled emotion. "Emeka. Son, I always knew. Call me when you wake up. Everything begins today." He called his son first. Kosi answered on the second ring, already awake, already curious. "Daddy, there are videos of you everywhere. Grandpa showed me on his tablet." He said you look like a film star. A brief pause, full of 10-year-old gravity. You look different, Daddy. I look like myself, Emeka said quietly. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, he heard Pa Nwasu's voice in the background asking something. Then Kosi said, reporting dutifully, Grandpa wants to know if you are coming home, or if you are now famous and won't come back. There was the sound of the old man's laughter, a rare, wonderful sound that Emeka had not heard in months. Tell him I'm coming back. I'm always coming back. Monday morning, Emeka drove to Madame Vivian's residence for the last time, not in the company car, but in a taxi. He arrived at 8 a.m., walked through the front gate past the security guard who looked at him twice, and found Madame Vivian seated in her living room with none of her usual armor. No carefully arranged outfit. No dismissive posture. She looked, for perhaps the first time since Emeka had known her, simply like a person who had not slept well. He placed his driver's ID card and the company vehicle keys on the table between them. Madam, he said calmly, I want to thank you for the employment of the past 7 years. You provided for my family during years when I could not have managed otherwise, and I do not forget that. But a new door has opened for me and I must walk through it. She looked at the keys. Then at him. Then something happened to her face. A quality of hardness that he had watched operate like a shield for 7 years simply gave way. Emeka. Her voice was low, stripped of the performance. I owe you more than an apology can cover. I treated you as though you were less than human, and I did it in public, and I did it deliberately. I thought I was being entertaining. She paused. I was being cruel, and I invited people to watch. Emeka said nothing. He waited. I am sorry, she said. The words were simple and she did not dress them up. I am genuinely, deeply sorry. Not because the world saw, because it was wrong. He studied her for a long moment. Then, I accept your apology, madam, and I will tell you something freely, without anger and without pride. He leaned forward slightly. True change does not begin in public. It begins in rooms like this one, when no one is watching, when there is nothing to gain. If what you felt Saturday night becomes action, real action, not performance, then something good will have come from all of it. She nodded slowly. Her eyes were wet. He stood, shook her hand, a formal, dignified gesture, and left. The weeks that followed moved at a velocity that would have overwhelmed a lesser man. Emeka signed a 3-year modeling contract with Modeling Hub Africa. The luxury watch brand confirmed him as their new regional face. A major skincare company, the same company whose billboard had featured his face a decade earlier, reached out through Mr. Bayo with what their message described as a conversation we should have had years ago. A profile piece in a prominent Pan-African lifestyle magazine ran the headline, "The Return of the Silent Storm, 7 Years Hidden, a Lifetime Ready." The photographs were shot on the rooftop of a Lagos hotel at golden hour, and they were by every measure extraordinary. But the story that spread furthest was not the fashion story. It was the human story. A clip of his toast at the gala, "Never judge a man by the uniform he wears today. You never know the king he was born to be," had been viewed over 14 million times in 11 days across multiple platforms. It had been translated into Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, French, and Swahili by different users independently. Pastors quoted it in sermons. Teachers played it for students. A motivational speaker in Nairobi put it on a poster. Kosi was enrolled in one of Abuja's finest international schools on a partial scholarship, a scholarship that Emeka supplemented comfortably with his first agency advance. Pa Nwasu was connected to a specialist at a private clinic in Abuja, whose arthritis treatment program made a visible difference within 3 weeks. The old man, who had not held a pen without pain in 2 years, wrote his son a letter in careful, slow handwriting and left it on the kitchen table. Emeka, I always told your mother you were made for something extraordinary. She knew it too. She would have loved to see this day. But I think somehow she already does. Your father. Emeka read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the old brown suitcase beside the portfolio and the Cape Town photograph. By the 6-week mark, Emeka had done something that few people in his position would have thought to do. He established a small foundation, not flashy, not premature, but deliberate. He called it the Uniform Foundation. Its mission simply stated, to identify and support single parents and caregivers in Nigeria who carry hidden talents and have set them aside in order to provide for their families. The foundation would offer skills training, mentorship, and small grants to help people pursue what life had interrupted. He announced it not through a press conference or a publicist, but through a single video he recorded himself in his flat in Lugd, the same modest living room, though now with Kosi's new school uniform hung neatly on the hook by the door and Pa Nwasu's medication properly stocked on the shelf. He sat in front of his phone and spoke directly to the camera. "I am not special because I was on a runway once. I am not special because a suit fits me well. I am not special because a viral moment gave me a second chance. I am ordinary in the same ways that millions of people in this country are ordinary people who have buried something great inside themselves because someone else's needs came first. This foundation is for them. If you know someone like that, send them to us. We are listening." The video received 600,000 views in 48 hours. Madame Vivian's reckoning arrived in stages, each one quieter and more personal than the last. First, the business partners. Mr. Adwale, true to the implication of his words at the party, requested a formal meeting and raised concerns about brand alignment and public perception. Two other corporate relationships went similarly quiet. These were not dramatic public withdrawals, they were the slow, professional kind, which in many ways hurt more. Then, the social circle. Kioma drifted. Ronk stopped calling. The group chats that had buzzed with enthusiasm about the driver plan became places where Vivian's messages received delayed, polite responses. The women who had laughed with her now had a new caution around her, the particular caution of people who have realized they were participants in something they would rather not be associated with. Then came the online reckoning. Someone in her office she never found out who leaked a voice recording of her telling the plan to a colleague on the Thursday before the party. The recording circulated. Comments on her business pages turned. She spent 3 days watching numbers shift in directions she had never experienced. But the hardest reckoning was the private one. She found herself, on a Tuesday evening 6 weeks after the gala, sitting alone in her magnificent Maitama living room with its Italian furniture and its imported silk curtains and its wall-to-wall silence. She had sent the staff home early. She poured a glass of wine she did not really want and she sat with the silence, and she was honest with herself for the first time in a very long time. She thought about every driver she had snapped at, every assistant she had humiliated, every time she had laughed at someone's expense and called it wit. She thought about the way her late mother, a seamstress from Anambra, who had worked 16-hour days to send Vivian to a good school, would look at the person she had become. She cried. Not in the graceful, composed way she cried at charity galas. She cried the way a person cries when they are completely alone and completely honest. Then she picked up her phone. 1 month after the party, Madame Vivian drove herself to Emeka's home in Gwarinpa for the first time in her life, driving a car without a chauffeur, because it felt important to arrive this way. She brought a wrapped gift for Kosi, a set of quality art supplies, because someone in her network had mentioned the boy liked to draw. She brought a box of herbal supplements recommended by a pharmacist friend for arthritis pain, addressed to Pa Nwasu. And she brought a handwritten letter in a sealed envelope addressed to Emeka. Kosi answered the door and smiled at her with polite curiosity, the cautious courtesy of a child who has been raised well. He called his father. Emeka appeared in the doorway in a plain t-shirt and jeans, relaxed and unhurried. He looked at her. He looked at the gifts. He stepped back and said simply, "Please come in." They sat in the living room. Pa Nwasu emerged from the bedroom, leaning on his walking stick, and nodded at her with the formal dignity of a retired schoolteacher receiving a visitor. He accepted the supplements with thanks and retreated. Kosi took the art supplies to his room with barely contained excitement. Emeka and Vivian sat across from each other with a pot of tea on the table between them. She handed him the letter. He opened it and read it while she watched. It was 4 pages, handwritten in careful script, and it began not with excuses but with a sentence she had taken 3 drafts to get right. I am writing this not to ask for anything, but to tell you the truth about what I have understood." He read all 4 pages. Then he folded it and placed it on the table. "You did not have to write this," he said. "I know," she said. "That's why it was important to do it." They talked for nearly 2 hours, not about the party, not about the videos, not about the business consequences, but about choices, and what shapes people, and what it costs to treat others as less than human, and what it costs to carry that truth quietly while someone does it to you. They talked about her mother, the seamstress, and his father, the schoolteacher. They talked about grief, and what grief does to ambition. They talked about Kosi, who appeared in the doorway at one point to show his father a drawing of a car he had made with the new pencils, and who accepted Madame Vivian's genuine compliment with a small, dignified thank you that sounded exactly like his father. When she stood to leave, he walked her to the door. "What you do from here," he said at the threshold, "is what will define this chapter. Not what happened at the party, not the apology. What comes after." She nodded. "I am beginning to understand that." Chapter 4, What Comes After. And she was beginning, truly, imperfectly, inconveniently beginning. Madame Vivian brought in an external consultant to audit the workplace culture across all her businesses. The findings were uncomfortable. She did not suppress the report. She published a summary of it internally, accompanied by a personal statement that management, including herself, had fallen short of the standards a healthy workplace required, and that change was not optional. Several managers who had built careers on imitating her old style of leadership found their contracts reviewed. She launched a mentorship initiative for young women entrepreneurs from modest backgrounds in Abuja, not as a publicity campaign, but quietly, with her own money, connected to no press release. She told her communications team, simply, "Do not announce it." She called her mother for the first time in 8 months. The conversation was long and difficult and necessary, and ended with her mother crying and saying things that Vivian had needed to hear for years. She began slowly to build a version of herself that she could respect. Emeka, meanwhile, was moving forward with the deliberate pace of a man who has learned that speed without direction is just motion. He fulfilled his modeling contracts with the same quiet professionalism that had once made him invisible and now made him magnetic. He was particular about what he endorsed. He declined 2 high-paying campaigns because, after careful reading, the brand's values did not align with what he wanted to represent. He hired a part-time assistant. He moved his family to a larger flat still in Abuja, still modest by some measures, but with a proper room for Pa Nwasu and a small study area for Kosi that got good morning light. He bought his father a new pen. The Uniform Foundation held its first intake of beneficiaries 3 months after its founding. 22 individuals, single parents and caregivers from across 5 states, identified through social workers and community organizations. Among them was a retired nurse who had always wanted to study graphic design, a 40-year-old mechanic who had been a gifted mathematician before poverty ended his education, and a young widow from Imo State who made handmade bags that her village had never known were extraordinary. Emeka met with each of them personally on intake day. He shook every hand. He listened to every story. He said the same thing to each of them, not as a speech, but as a simple statement of fact. You were not wrong to put your family first. You were not wrong to carry your dreams quietly. You are not too late. Dara Osai, the fashion scout who had recognized him at the gala, became a professional ally and in the way of people who are brought together by unusual circumstances and discover a genuine connection, something approaching a friend. She was precise, warm, and as unimpressed by status as anyone Emeka had ever met. One evening, over jollof rice at a small restaurant in Ikoyi that neither of them had chosen for any reason except that it was nearby and unpretentious, she said to him, "You know what was different about you that night? It wasn't the suit. The suit was excellent, but it wasn't the suit." Emeka looked at her. "What was it?" "You walked in knowing exactly who you were. Most people in that room, all that money, all that status, were still performing, still hopping. Someone important would notice them." She paused. "You didn't need anyone to notice you, and that is why everyone noticed you." Emeka considered this for a long moment. 7 years of being invisible teaches you a strange kind of freedom, he said finally. When no one expects anything from you, you stop performing for their expectations. She smiled. That's the most fashionable thing I have ever heard. Kosi's drawing, the one he had shown his father and Madame Vivian that afternoon, ended up being part of a small art show organized by his school at the end of term. It was a drawing of two men standing side by side, one in a driver's uniform, the other in a suit, and the faces were identical. The title, written in a 10-year-old's careful handwriting at the bottom of the page, was Same Man, Different Day. His teacher framed it and hung it in the classroom. Epilogue: The stranger who changed everything. 6 months after the night of the gala, a journalist writing a long-form profile of Emeka for a major publication asked him the question she said she had been saving for last: if Madame Vivian had never sent that invitation, if she had never planned the ridicule, do you think you would have walked back into your own life? Emeka was quiet for a very long time, long enough that the journalist thought perhaps he would not answer. Then he said, I think the invitation was the excuse I had been waiting to give myself. The truth is that Kosi was getting older and asking questions about who I used to be. My father's health was shifting, and I found myself wanting him to see me, really see me, before time made that impossible. I was ready. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. He looked at the recorder between them. She held up a mirror. It was a cruel mirror held in a cruel hand, but I saw myself in it. And what I saw, that was not her doing. That was mine. The article was titled The Man Who Needed No One's Permission to Rise. It was shared over 3 million times. The handsome stranger who walked into that party on a Saturday night in Lagos did not just stun a room full of 400 people. He changed a trajectory, several trajectories. He reminded a powerful woman of her mother's hands and her own long-abandoned capacity for genuine feeling. He showed a 10-year-old boy that the father who drove quietly through traffic each morning was also the man in the photograph in the old brown suitcase, and that both were equally real, equally worthy of pride. He gave 22 people a foundation that told them their interrupted dreams were not canceled, only delayed. He gave an industry a story about what a man looks like when he walks in knowing his own worth. And to everyone who had ever been told they were just a driver, just a cleaner, just a guard, just a face in a uniform at someone else's event, he sent a message that needed no platform, no press release, and no microphone. The stranger you ridicule today might be the legend you celebrate tomorrow. And the legend you celebrate tomorrow was already there, waiting for the moment to remember itself. The end. If this story inspired you, comment, respect everyone below right now. Which chapter touched you most deeply? Tell us in the comments. Like this video if you believe in the quiet power of dignity. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Our next story is already being prepared for you. See you in the next one. God bless.